this lab, I will go over some labs that can determine different types of bonds in different substances. Bonds are covalent, network, covalent, ionic, and metallic. Just a quick refresher on each of these. Covalent is any two nonmetals bonded together. They are soft and crumbly and very volatile when they have a low molecular mass. So they're very volatile, they're light, evaporate easily. Network covalent form crystals, but they're also covalents. Good example of this would be like diamond. Ionic is a positive metal bonded with a negative nonmetal. They are also form crystals. And metallic is any two metals bonded together, just like metal, very malleable and strong. The first test to decide which bonds are in a substance is melting point. It's a very basic test. Just get out a hot plate. Throw my hot plate there. And you turn it on. Put your substances on here. Now for this one, the one that melts first, most likely be a covalent bond. Because covalent bonds are the weakest, and they have the lowest IMFs, and they break apart quite easily, resulting in a low melting point. The other kinds of bonds are quite strong and probably won't melt on a standard melting plate, or most of them won't. There are some exceptions to the rules. There are some exceptions to any of these rules. Then to narrow it down further, there's solubility. Solubility is just how well something dissolves in water or a liquid. Now for H2O, which is polar, usually ionic things dissolve in H2O. And that's like dissolves like. So the polar water dissolves the polar ionic. The negative and positive ends on the water attract the positive and negative ends on the ionic bonds and break them apart. Now for nonpolar, a nonpolar liquid like hexane, a nonpolar bond like a covalent bond should dissolve in that. So this is nonpolar, oopsie, nonpolar. The nonpolar hexane dissolves the nonpolar covalent bond. So that's like dissolves like. Things that will probably never dissolve are metals and networks, or network covalents. Just think of those like as a piece of metal and a diamond. They don't see those dissolving too often. Then there is conductivity. And that's just how well the electrons can travel around in something. Now, a very good conductor is a metal. Not good conductors are covalent and network. No, they will not conduct. But what will conduct is ionic, but only if it is dissolved in water or a liquid. And that is because the ions break apart and they form positive and negative charges in the water. So positive and negative charges can conduct the electricity quite well and allow for an electric charge to flow through them. So an ionic substance will be conductive if it's dissolved. If it's not dissolved, it is not conductive. Now, for just some like sample problems. Say if something is dissolved in water, oopsie, dissolved in water, has a high melting point. What would that substance most likely be? Ionic. So it's able to dissolve in water, which is polar, and has a high melting point, which is ionic, which means it's ionic. What happens if something does not? Oh my goodness. Doesn't dissolve or conduct or melt. This would most likely be a network covalent. Now, a good way to just remember these is just remember some examples. So for covalent, just think like sort of like a waxy substance, just soft, crumbly. So think of wax, just to remember this, and think of all the properties a wax would have. For network, think of a diamond. For ionic, think of salt. For metal or metallic, just think of like copper or just an alloy. And just by thinking of these like basic substances that have these bonds, it's quite easy to remember all the properties they have just by using common sense.